You will fail. So what? Everybody does. But your gym, your watch, your yoga pants, they pretend you won't. So when you miss a day, eat the pancakes. Give up on a workout? You failed? Seriously, what the hell? We're Body. We've been a part of that too, but not anymore. At Body, we're rejecting perfection and embracing reality. Not in a Pizza Monday kind of way, in a loving your whole life kind of way. In a, this workout is fun and it's okay if I take a week off kind of way. In an, I'm eating healthy and it's okay if I indulge kind of way. In a, I like myself no matter what kind of way. Yeah, you will fail. We all will. But we're not going to let that be the end. You see that? We're already making progress. So let's keep going. We are Body. Start your free trial at body.com. That's BODI.com.
Hi there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 466 of the Duke Basketball Report. We're here to talk about Iowa. Blue Devils faced off against the Iowa Hawkeyes last night. It was arguably Duke's best game of the season. I think a lot of people would say that's probably the case. We're here to chat about it a little bit. Also have you help you look ahead to the game coming up this weekend against Maryland Eastern Shore. That will not be one of our extensive previews. I can already tease you that. In any event, I'm your host this week or today, whatever the heck, for this episode. My name is Jason Evans, because after 464 of these, you probably have no idea who I am. Joining me is Donald Wine in Washington, D.C. Donald, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Jason, I know last night was a late affair for all of us, but take note, that was the last game that will start after 7 p.m. for Duke in the regular season this season. So yay for that.
Yeah. For those of us who have to go to work early in the morning, this is a wonderful blessing. That was Donald Wine. Sam Klein usually joins us. Here's the deal with Sam. We were going to start recording this podcast about a half hour ago, and Sam said, "Oh my God, guys, I can't make it. I've got a last minute work meeting that has come up." So we said, "No problem, man. We'll wait for you a little bit." "How long will it be?" He goes, like 5, 10, maybe 20 minutes. No sweat. That was 35 minutes ago. And Sam finally said, "I'm still in my work meeting. I don't know when I'm going to get off of it." So Donald and I are starting without Sam. At any moment, it is possible that Sam will join us. He will flow right into this thing. It'll be like he was never missing. But we're going to begin without him. So, Donald, we will begin the way we always do, with the headlines. What is your headline from Duke against Iowa?
So mine is Duke sends Hawkeyes to a B&B that's blocks and boards in victory at MSG.
I like that. Your headline, I will already tell you, is better than mine. My headline is Mashing Murray. Blue Devil D too much for Hawkeye All-American, because I thought our defense and the way we held Kris Murray in check was the story of this game more so than anything else. Sam isn't here to give us a headline. And I'm going to be honest. Those of you out there, we got emails again. People wrote to us at dbrpodcast@gmail.com. No offense, people. They're just, am I wrong, Donald? There wasn't a headline that, like I said, that's the one. I read them. They were okay, but I think we can move on. I just didn't.
I will say we got a lot of people giving their observations for the game, which
a lot of analysis, cool. Which is nice.
A lot of analysis. Yeah, just not a lot of headlines this week.
Right. So, but in any event, people out there, if you want, feel free to email us at dbrpodcast@gmail.com with your headline from the game and your favorite play, because we will be doing that as well later on. But first, we got to get to the good. Donald, take me through it. What did you think was the best thing that you saw from the Blue Devils in this victory over Iowa? By the way, a victory where Duke won the game 74-62.
Look, it's the defense. I mean, the defense has been pacing our whole team all year, and last night might have been, in a way, the best defensive performance. Again, Jason, you kind of alluded to it in your headline, the fact that we entered this game and a lot of people were saying, hey, Kris Murray is going to be the guy to focus in on. 21 and 10 averaging this season. He ended with 8 points and 7 rebounds, which 7 rebounds, yeah, that's decent. But when you're averaging 21 points and 10 rebounds, that is a very, very low output.
Hey, let me just, so people are aware of it, because you need to know what Kris Murray's been doing in other games. You mentioned his averages, but like literally just a few days ago against Georgia Tech, dude went for 31 and 20. I want to repeat that. 31 points and 20 rebounds against Georgia Tech. He shot, it was 11 of 18 from the floor. This is a guy who, they played Seton Hall earlier this year, another good team. He went for 29 and 11 against Seton Hall. This dude puts up 20, 25, 30 plus points literally every game. He's almost always grabbing double-digit rebounds. But like you said, against Duke, 8 and 7. And he, worth noting, he only attempted 9 shots in other than games where it was a blowout and he barely played, because they rested him. He usually is shooting like 14, 17, 18 shots in a game, 20 shots even against Seton Hall. He took 20 against Georgia Tech. He took 18 against TCU and Clemson. He's taken like 14, 17 shots. He only got off 9 shots against Duke. And I think our defense, especially Mark Mitchell and Dariq Whitehead, were the two guys who were doing most of the work on him. They were outstanding.
Absolutely, especially Mark Mitchell, because Mark Mitchell started the game. Dariq Whitehead, when he came in, we'll talk a little bit about him in a little bit, just from both ends of the floor. But I think when it comes to Mark Mitchell, he embraced this challenge. I think he talked with Andy Katz after the game. He said it was a challenge and that he's a good player, and I was tasked with this, and I wanted to make sure I did this at the Garden, right? Like being at the Mecca of basketball, it's always easy to get lost in the lights. And again, once again, these guys did not get lost in the lights. And I really, really like that. But Jason, the one thing about that game plan is that they basically told Iowa, the rest of the team, come on, beat us. I dare you. Right. And they didn't. These guys shot 40% under 40% from the floor in the game. Block party. They had 7 blocks on the game. Ryan Young led with 3. You also had Dariq Lively with a couple. Guys were active, rebounding. They out-rebounded them by 10. Like, these guys, again, the blocks and boards came to play, but also, it's not even they were forcing turnovers either. It was just good, physical, old-fashioned defense that won this basketball game. And it went, once again, even if Kris Murray wasn't the guy, everyone else on Duke's defense did their job too, because there was no other unsung heroes that stepped up in Iowa's absence. Everyone was missing shots, and a lot of the times, especially when Duke went on some of their runs, it was one and gone. They got one shot off, they got the rebound, and Duke was going the other way. It was a very, I can't say enough about how great this defense looked, how solid it looked for, I would say, 90% of the game. This defense really showed up to play. Again, they embraced all of their roles. Everyone worked together, and everyone contributed on the defensive end.
Iowa was held about 25 points less than their season average. When we did the preview of this game, we talked about the fact that Iowa is a team that plays fast and is a team that is literally one of the best offensive teams in the country. Duke holds them to 62 points, easily their lowest point output of the year. And
Jason, they were really at like 50 with about a minute and a half left. They hit 10 points in the last minute and a half. So really, if you think about it, they were really at and they held this team to just under 50 points or just over 50 points in a basketball game. Incredible.
Yeah, it was truly remarkable. And teams hit their peaks at different times. I'm very aware of that. And with a young team, it's always going to take longer to get there. But it's just so easy to see how this team's going to get exponentially better, as Lively and Whitehead get more integrated and get more of that rust off. I just love to see the fact that the defense is playing so well, clicking this well early on. Usually defense comes later. Usually guys, they bring offense with them and defense comes later. And there is a distinct possibility. In fact, I will almost be surprised if by the time we hit, late January, early February, this isn't one of the 5 best defensive teams in the country. It actually may already be, but this truly has the makings of, I don't know. I haven't looked back over the years to see how far back we'd have to go, but I won't be at all surprised if this ends up being, a historically great Duke defensive team, one of the top 2, 3, 4, 5 defensive teams of the past 20 plus years.
One quick note, also in the defense, we mentioned on the last episode when we were previewing this game and talking about what Duke had done over the last week. We said, hey, when it comes to Dereck Lively, we want to see him go for more blocks, but also try to get the rebound of those blocks. He did that twice last night. He had 2 blocks last night. I'm pretty sure on both of his blocks, he got the rebound and went. I think he also grabbed a rebound off of a Ryan Young block. So again, guys were all over the place and tipping, getting the ball in a position where they could go the other way and make plays on the other end. And if you think about it, Jason, there's a lot of times where a block shot on one end leading to a 3-point or a lay-in and a foul on the other end. That's just a demoralizing blow for your opposition. And Duke was able to do that over and over and over again last night. And again, I think, in a lot of years you have offense that sparks your defense. Last night and so far this year, our defense has sparked our offense. And I think that's great.
Yeah. So let's get, by the way, you mentioned the rebounding. I did want to mention very quickly. This is the 9th time in 11 games this season that Duke has had a rebounding advantage. The 7th time in 11 games, we've had a double-digit advantage on rebounding. And Ryan Young continues to be an absolute rebounding phenom. He pulled down double-digit rebounds again. When you think about like the number of minutes he's playing, the number of rebounds he's grabbing is unbelievable. But I wanted to get to some individual players. I'm the host, so I'm gonna
go ahead. I know who you're talking about.
Host privilege, man. I'm talking about Jeremy Roach and Mark Mitchell. So Jeremy Roach matches his career high with 22 points. He was 3 of 6 from 3. It's his second 20-point game of the season, third one of his career, and Duke is now 7-0 in Jeremy Roach's career when he hits 3 or more 3-pointers in a game. He had 3 in this game. When Jeremy Roach hits 3 3-pointers, Duke does not lose. I love the way the opening play of the game, the very first play that set the tone, was Jeremy Roach getting a smart, high percentage shot and converting it. It's the kind of thing a leader does. He makes sure that you're in an offensive flow and getting a good shot right from the get-go. And throughout the game, that shot he got at the beginning where he sort of, he was on the perimeter, he drove inside, he made some moves, and he got a high percentage shot. That was his whole game. He kept getting in the lane and taking those short pull-up jumpers that he is so good at. High arcing shot that is really difficult to block. The stat on him, to me, that's amazing. He plays 37 minutes in this game. His plus minus was plus 20. In the 3 minutes he was not on the floor, so he played 37, not on for 3, plus 20 when he's playing, Duke's minus 8 in the 3 minutes he's not on the floor. You think he was the MVP of the game? Yeah, I think probably so. I mean, talk about night and day. That is unbelievable from Jeremy Roach. Give me some Roach, and then let's talk about Mark Mitchell.
His leadership was great as well. I mean, as the captain, there's a lot of times where, Jason, you were talking about some of the floaters that he did, some of the 3-point, the high arcing shots that he had. He also had some where he was able to find the opening to drive the lane and lay it in off the glass over the outstretched arms of Iowa's defense. And that's something that is markedly improved from last year, and is also, just one of those things where it's improved even a little bit since before then, right? Like the fact that he, some of us used to, hold our breath when he would drive the lane because we knew, oh no, something's about to happen and it might not be good. Now, the confidence that we see from him driving the lane and putting it off the glass, getting and ones, also distributing to teammates. He and Tyrese Proctor had a great relationship on the wing. Sometimes, Roach would bring the ball up. Sometimes he'd defer to Proctor, but just that communication that those two have really contributed to elevate both of their games, most especially Jeremy Roach.
All right, so it's time to talk about Mark Mitchell. And I'm going to be the one to freely admit I've been bagging on the guy a little bit lately. I've been talking about
just a scotch.
Hey, Mark.
Just a scotch.
Yeah, I've been saying I need to see Mark do it. In a game where it's competitive, in a game against a higher quality opponent. And Mark said, "Yo, Jason, watch this." I was tremendously impressed with his game last night. His ability to get to the rim was just elite, absolutely elite. Have you looked at his shot chart?
Yeah,
Mark Mitchell's shot chart. It's this cluster of all these baskets right at the rim, right next to the basket. And it's worth noting, it wasn't like other guys were drawing the defense and he was going backdoor or something like that. And a lot of this was him putting the ball on the floor, and getting to the rim through his athleticism, through his strength, through his physical gifts on his own, and then finishing really, really well. I thought Mark Mitchell was absolutely outstanding in this game. I said Jeremy Roach was the MVP. It might have been Mark Mitchell because, again, we mentioned Mark Mitchell was matched against an All-American on defense most of the night. And he did very little switching, by the way. I noticed on Kris Murray, they were not going to let Kris Murray alone. They were not going to switch very much on him and let Kris Murray get one of these, mismatches that would allow him to take advantage of his height and strength. I just, the confidence and the purpose that Mark Mitchell played with was something we have not seen yet from him. And I'm here to reverse course on where I was a few days ago. I know Dariq Whitehead needs to play more minutes. I'm now flummoxed and confused about where those minutes come from because I don't know they should come from Mark Mitchell.
I mean, 17 points, 5 boards, and that's just not that doesn't do it justice, right? The fact, again, cannot say enough about how he worked on the defensive end. And honestly, Jason, if you work that hard on the defensive end, especially when you're going up against the All-American, a guy whose twin brother plays the same way and is currently playing for the Sacramento Kings, like, you can get tired from that. And this guy did not. It felt like he had a second boost of energy every single time he got a stop on the defensive end. He translated it into points on the offensive end. So, and I know, like I said, he embraced that opportunity, embraced that job, that task that he had, and A+ effort on everything that he did last night, especially on the defensive end.
All right, Donald, I know you want to talk about a couple of the other guys, a couple of the bench players. Duke's been getting stellar bench play lately. Give me what you got on these gentlemen.
Yeah, well, first off, I want to talk about Ryan Young. Ryan Young, 11 boards off of the bench. And even though he didn't factor in that much on the offensive end, I felt like he did because there were some times he pulled down some offensive rebounds, but really on defense, he got a few blocks. He altered some shots, and he also just was a menace inside. Whenever guys went inside, Ryan Young was able to have great footwork, great defense. Again, it's like he's faced these teams before, Jason. I know we've talked about the number of Big Ten teams we've faced so far this season. I feel like he was ready for this particular defense and ready just to figure out how to control the inside alongside Dariq Lively. And I think that is where it's key, because sometimes we had both of them in the game at the same time, along with Filipowski, and it created a big lineup, but Ryan Young didn't waver from his goal and from his task. The other one I'll say, Dariq Whitehead looks more and more comfortable every single game that he goes on. I think honestly, for us fans, the worst thing that can happen right now is that we're going to have like 3 weeks where we're going to have 2 games, basically. But for Dariq Whitehead, this could be the best thing that happened to this team, because he's finally going to get that practice time in, and he's finally going to get time to gel, because, again, he's learning on the fly. Once he gets some time to settle in and really focus on what he needs to do to, on offense and on defense, man, he's going to be a menace. But like the fact that he came in again when Mark Mitchell wasn't on the floor, Dariq Whitehead was all in Kris Murray's grill. And on offense, I felt like he had 1-3, which I'll talk about later, but he also had just a couple of moves where you're like, oh yeah, this is the Dariq Whitehead that everybody's been saying was coming. I feel like we're very close to getting the full Dariq Whitehead.
It's exciting to think about. All right, the last thing I have in the good, Donald, I want to talk about maturity for a moment, because there are a couple things about this game that really impressed me in terms of the way the Duke players handled a different or a difficult situation. The first one is, with 1 minute and 8 seconds left, you alluded to this earlier, Iowa was making a real run, and they cut this lead. It was, 18-point lead, something like that, 17, 19-point lead. They cut it down to 8. And I don't know about you, I was panicking a little bit.
I had faith in my boys. I had faith.
Well, I'm glad you did. I'm sure I'm not alone in being a Duke fan who's like, these freshmen, because it was mostly the freshmen out there, these freshmen are going to get flustered here. And John Shire called a timeout. And let's not forget, we've talked about this a lot. We got freshman players, we got a freshman coach also. And calm the team down. They came out of that timeout. They promptly got Jeremy Roach the ball in a situation where he had to be fouled by Iowa. He buries the 2 free throws the way your junior leader is supposed to. Then they got to stop, and they raced the other way, and Mark Mitchell got a slam dunk, and suddenly 8 was 12 and the game was over. That's a great moment of maturity against a really good team, kind of team you're going to be seeing in the NCAA tournament, where Duke had a solid lead. It went away and Duke went, nah, we're not that worried about this. We're going to handle this. And the other maturity thing I wanted to mention was the pace. I'm not sure if you noticed it, but Iowa wants to play fast. It wasn't like they were pressing Duke, but they had guys on our guards as soon as we inbounded the ball the entire game, because they wanted to kind of speed us up in the backcourt and speed us up into the front court and get that game moving, get it churning along. That's the pace Iowa wants to play at. Duke hasn't played a game like that we haven't been facing teams that want to run all season. Well, it didn't bother us. We kept things to 9 turnovers, which is a very reasonable number against a team like Iowa. Despite the fact that they put pressure on us, we were still able to play our game on both ends of the floor. We didn't get sped up too much. We showed that we don't mind playing fast. When you have a team that's comfortable playing fast and comfortable playing slow, that's a sign of maturity and a sign that these guys have things under control. It doesn't feel like freshmen. It really doesn't. The headiness and the calm with which these guys play.
Jason, on that last few sequences of the game, you even cut off, like, how great it was even greater when you figure out what you cut off. Because right after Mark Mitchell gets that dunk, Iowa inbounds the ball and tries to do a length of the court pass. And they throw it straight out of bounds. We come right back down. Kyle Filipowski dribbles basically all the way down to the end of the shot clock, hits it off the rim, grabs his own rebound for his 10th rebound of the game, and then puts it back in. And that's just bang, bang, good night, go home. Like, the way they closed out the game was great. There's obviously some things that were shaky, right? We'll talk about that in the bad, but like the way they closed out the game, the headiness to be like, let's just calm down, from the coaching staff down to the, last man on the bench. Everyone was just like, hey, let's just calm down for a minute, get this next bucket, get this next stop, let's get up out of here. And they did that. So hats off to this team for just, again, rising to the occasion, not being blinded by the lights of Madison Square Garden, and making it our house once again.
So let's get to the bad. And I have a feeling this will not take very long. Okay, let me do mine first. Let's see. So Iowa did us some favors, I thought, by missing some open threes early in the game, like right off the bat. They then missed some layups, some fairly easy shots late in the first half. Those are two of the things that allowed Duke to sort of take control of the game, to at least to some extent, in the first half, that we then exerted even more in the second half. So that's kind of, I guess, a little bit of a bad thing, that we allowed Iowa to get a lot of shots that they probably should have made. You mentioned Lively doing a better job rebounding. He only had 2 rebounds in this game. I'm going to still say that Dariq Lively needs to get better at rebounding. And there were a couple times where you could tell he wasn't going to quite reach a rebound, and his body got in the way a little bit, and picked up a foul or found himself in a bad position. He's got to work on that. That's got to get better. We've mentioned, but it deserves to be mentioned, the bad, that from like the 4:30 mark down to about the 1 minute mark, Iowa went on a 10-1 run. You don't want teams going on 10-1 runs on you in the final 5 minutes of the game. I know Duke had a solid lead. I know we came back from that and we stretched it out again, and there were never any concerns, but still, I got little Purdue flashbacks in my head of Duke failing to score like for the final 7 minutes against Purdue as we were going through that little run. So that's another bad thing. And then the last bad thing I had is we only had 11 offensive rebounds. We did a really nice job on the board, but only 11 offensive rebounds. Our offensive rebounding rate was just a shade under 30%. Not great, but not terrible. This is a team that's Duke has been coming close to or exceeding 40% offensive rebounding rates. So, that's just one thing. I got to nitpick a little bit here. That's one thing where I feel like maybe we could have done a little bit of a better job. What you got for the bad?
Yeah, I think those, the last, I guess, 2 minutes of the game, I won't even, you cut down the last like under 4 timeout down, but I would say the last 2 minutes where we kind of played a little sloppy, and you obviously don't want to do that in late game situations. Again, credit to our team for kind of nipping it in the bud quickly and kind of, focusing in on the last minute or so and getting out of there. I think for me, the ball movement wasn't as great as it was in games past. I think we only had 13 assists on 28 made baskets. So that ratio, while still decently high, is a little bit lower than we're used to seeing. And I want to see that continue to improve. Because again, I think, we had some open shots that we missed, especially in the second half. We went a little cold from beyond the arc in the second half, but I do think that a lot of the game became stagnant at certain periods of the game where we could have passed the ball around, made an extra pass, and probably got a better shot. So those are the ones. And also, I think, again, turnovers down the stretch is always going to be key, taking care of the basketball. We were a little sloppy when Iowa made their run. We kind of handed them the ball on a couple of occasions, but I think on the whole, keep taking care of the basketball was something that we did well last night. It was just that final, few minutes where we kind of let it get away from us.
Yeah. So let's get to our, you don't have any other bad, right?
I don't know. That was it.
Yeah. Like we said, it might have been Duke's best game of the season. Let's get to our favorite play. Donald, what's your nominee? What played you like best?
Yeah. So for me, it's probably an unconventional one. And I'll tell you why I enjoyed it. It was around the 11:48 mark of the first half. It's tied 11-11, and we got a 3-pointer from Jacob Grandison. Iowa comes down. They miss a shot very quickly. We come back down kind of on a fast break. I don't think they gave it to us as a fast break point, but it was a very high tempo portion of the game. And Dariq Whitehead nails a three. I think the net barely moved to make it 17-11. Now, you may be thinking that's kind of an insignificant portion of the game, but we never trailed after that. Like once it was 11-11, that was the last time that game was tied. And those two, it kind of symbolized what the whole game was. Anytime Iowa got somewhat close, Duke was able to put on the motor and take it to 8, 10, even 15 at times. So I thought those two threes, especially given the fact that we haven't shot threes very well, those 2 threes gave our team a lot of confidence that they could hit what they wanted to hit in this particular game. And I think that is why I consider it my favorite.
So my favorite play comes from the second half. It was one of the time that Ryan Young had one of his flat-footed block shots, which he had a number of in this game. It's just a matter of him being a savvy player and sort of knowing the angles and all that other kind of stuff. So Ryan Young blocks the shot. Duke races the other way. Jeremy Roach has the ball, and he ends up, getting bumped in the lane and getting a 3-point play. Really, really nice finish on his part through contact. And it was the moment that it gave Duke a 10-plus point lead. I know we much later on, ended up giving up. The lead went down to 8, so that 10-plus point lead went away. But that was the moment that sort of elevated us kind of to that next level where Iowa goes like, we're in real trouble now. And I just thought it was a beautiful play, and it showcased the defense to offense that has been so much of a hallmark of what this team does best on the year. All right, Donald, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we look ahead to what Duke has coming up this weekend. Stay with us. All right, Donald, we gotta take care of a little bit of a preview here. Duke has Maryland Eastern Shore as our opponent, who is coming into Cameron this weekend. This is kind of it for the really for the non-conference games that matter. At least until we get to the NCAA tournament. After this, Duke will have nothing but ACC games left on the schedule. So Maryland Eastern Shore wraps up our non-conference schedule. And let's be very honest, they're probably the worst team that Duke's going to face this year. This is not a good team. Tell me a little bit about who they have played and what they have done in their games thus far. They are 3-6, not a good record, and they have not played anyone they played Virginia, I guess.
Yeah, well, Jason, you just mentioned that according to KenPom, you are right. This is the worst opponent on our schedule, according to ranking, 317th in KenPom. So much further down the list than some of the games that we have been playing recently. They do have 3 wins, one against Bryn Athyn, which is a Division III school, one against Marist, and one against Lehigh. So not really good quality wins here. Their losses are to Old Dominion, Charlotte, George Washington, UVA, Liberty, and George Mason. I think the one thing about Maryland Eastern Shore, and it's funny because I actually saw maybe like 5 or 10 minutes of their game against UVA. They are terrible at shooting. They are one of the worst shooting teams in college basketball. They shoot 43% from the floor as a team. They shoot 32% from 3. They shoot 40% from 2, which might be even worse. Most teams want you to be like in the 50 to 55% range at the very minimum from 2 points. If you're not shooting 40% from 2, like you're not going to kill anybody from 3, and you're not going to get a lot of shots from the free throw line.
You mentioned 40% from 2. There are 363 teams in Division I basketball. They are 356th. Again, 356 out of 363 at their 2-point field goal percentage. That is terrible. Literally the 7th worst team in the country at 2-point field goal percentage. Let me give you a couple of the other stats. Of the 363 teams, they're 348th in offense. They're 221st in defense. When you're 221st in defense and that's your calling card, like that's your thing, you're like, hey, look at us. We're 221 on defense. That shows how bad they are. They're a terrible team. And they're tiny.
I was going to say,
small.
this is the worst stat. This is the worst stat. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Ken Palm says they're the 358th smallest team or biggest, I guess. They're the 5th smallest, 358th, whatever it is. They are one of the smallest teams in the entire country. The biggest guy that they will have on the floor is Nathan Pollard. He is 6'5". Duke's coming at you with like 2 7-footers at all times. And like it is entirely possible that there will be moments where our point guard will be Tyrese Proctor at 6'5". And then we'll have 6'8" Dariq Whitehead and 6'8" Mark Mitchell on the wings. And then a couple 7-footers on the front line. Our point guard will be the same size, if not taller, than their center. That is just, as you might imagine, on a team that's really small, they're among the bottom 100 teams in the country at both offensive rebounding and defensive rebounding. They are literally like the 4th worst shot blocking team in the country. I mean, they get some steals. About the only thing they do well is they get some steals, but that's about it. Like you said, they can't shoot. When they played decent teams, like when they play Virginia and they played other, teams that are somewhat decent, they've been getting clobbered. Ken Pomeroy says final score from this game will be 80-53. He predicts a 27-point Blue Devil win. I will not be at all surprised if that's what happens.
So the one thing about the height that I was going to mention, because yes, you're right. They are the 5th smallest team in college basketball. Meanwhile, we are the 5th tallest team in college basketball. We need to use that to our advantage because, as you know, Jason, there are times where if you have a smaller team, your object is to make the game play small. You make it where you take the bigs out of the game. We have, again, like you said, we have a lineup that our point guard could be the tallest player on their team on the floor. And we need to play like that. We need to use that to our advantage. They love, because they're so short, teams get a lot of assists on them. Their assist to field goal made ratio that they give up is 58.5%. That's really, really bad, which means obviously that plays into a strength that we have. We need to use that to our advantage. Pass over defense.
Because you can see over them and you can see the floor.
You can pass over the defense. Exactly. There's going to be, hey, if you're on one side of the court and you can have a skip pass, you can do that. Why? Because you have 7-footers in the corner. Jacob Grennison comes off the bench. He's 6'8". You have, Dariq Whitehead, he's 6'8" off the bench. Like, you have guys that can come in that can pass over this defense. They need to use that, move the ball around, and again, use the size to their advantage and make it where the other team has to play big instead of us having to adapt to their smallness.
Okay, so there's not much more we need to say about this. This will be an interesting game to see, some of the guys who need some more development. Dariq Whitehead, I'm sure John Shire's going to tell Dariq Whitehead, dude, I want you to flex yourself a little bit. This is a team against which you should try and push the envelope a little bit because this is where we need you to get to. But I also think it's a game where we're going to get to see some of the deeper bench guys. And before we go, it brings us to a question that we got from Jeffrey Lamb. Listener Jeffrey Lamb said, he sent us a simple 6-word question. He said, why isn't Schutt getting any run? It's a legit question that we're going to take a second and talk about because, reasonably highly touted, top 50 recruit, considered to be one of the, if not the best shooter in the entire class. Jaden Schutt just has not played for Duke in meaningful games so far this year. Donald, a comment on it, a thought on it? Why do you think he's not getting in games?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why, and I know you're going to talk about one, but the main thing is he isn't shooting the ball well. And for a guy who, again, his last name is Schutt, as you mentioned, he was brought in here to be a shooter. He has not found the rim, or he's not found the net yet. A lot of these games that he's played, even in the mop-up minutes.
He's 1 for 6 on 3-pointers and 0 for 2 on 2-pointers. So overall, he's 1 for 8. By the way, even at the free throw line, he's only 2 for 4 on free throws. And this guy, reputation is that he can really, knock down some free throws, but he hasn't even been able to do that.
Yeah, and that's a confidence issue, right? Like, we know he can shoot the ball. We've seen it. Like, it's not a question of, I don't know if this guy has what we thought he had. He does have it. He just needs to gain the confidence to do it. Will that come in this game? Maybe we'll see him for extended minutes if it gets to be a blowout, as the metrics predict. If it's also something that in practice that he needs to overcome. And we've seen this from guys in the past, right? Like, we've seen guys who in practice, you hear that they're killing it. They're making every single shot. They're Chef Curry in practice. And then they get to the game and they can't hit the broadside of a barn. It happens. And I think he just needs to overcome that. He needs to, just make it where he can find one of those shots go in, to see it go in, to gain that confidence. It's going to take some time. And I'm not like low on him at all. I just want him to be able to find that confidence that he can get the shot, because down the stretch, him shooting the ball well will add another element to this offense that will be helpful. So I'm looking forward to seeing if this practice time that we have in the next couple of weeks, if that's going to help him, or if we see him on Saturday. But the reason why he's not playing, for me, among the myriad of issues, is the one thing that he's on the floor to do on offense is shoot, and he hasn't been shooting the ball well.
So I think there's twin reasons. There are two reasons. I think you're probably right that he isn't filling it up the way we would expect. If he was coming in games, even at mop-up time, and knocking down a couple 3-pointers, the coaches would notice that, and I think he'd be fighting and perhaps getting a little more time as a result. So there's no question that's part of it. I think the other thing is defense. I've watched him a little bit on the floor. I don't. This is a team that is built around defense. I don't get the impression that Jaden Schutt has quite picked up the defensive principles that these guys need to have to be able to really work well with their teammates. Defense is such of a team thing. If you have one weak link, it can really, really harm the entire, if you got 4 guys playing great defense and one guy playing bad defense, you're going to be bad on defense. Defense is sort of the lowest common denominator, weakest link kind of thing. And I think that he struggles a little bit at that end of the floor. And then I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is Duke's playing 9 guys. This is a very, very deep team. And I think he's just struggling to get time because there are other guys who are bringing better things to the table, and there's just not really room. I mean, we're already talking about the fact that, as Whitehead needs more minutes, where is it going to come from? Where would Jaden Schutt be getting minutes? I don't know. And the one thing I would say about it is, look, his minutes, his play, it seems like the same kind of thing. Jalen Blakes didn't play at all last year, hardly. This is the same kind of thing, just getting mop-up minutes in blowouts. And we're seeing already that Jalen Blakes has turned into a very, very effective player for Duke as a sophomore who's getting serious time. We've seen this play out again and again. If you give these guys a little bit of time, they can turn into really effective players, especially a guy who brings the kind of skills as a shooter that Jaden Schutt does. I don't know that this year we're ever going to see him be part of the regular rotation in competitive games, but I hope he will have patience and stick around, because I think I've got no reason to believe that someone who's that good at putting the ball in the hoop isn't going to find room in the Duke rotation down the road.
Offense will get you on the floor. Defense will keep you there. And I think that is really, like you said, I talked about the offense. You talked about the defense. Those are the two real issues. But honestly, I think for him, just like you said, Jason, Jalen Blakes is a good example. I think some people remember Grayson Allen. He didn't play a lot, in the first part of his freshman year. It was only towards the end of the year that he started to get more minutes, again, as he matured a little bit on defense, and then also brought that offensive element to the table. This can happen.
Go look up Nolan Smith, Ryan Kelly. I'm trying to think. There have been plenty of them throughout Duke history. I want to say Daniel Ewing as well. There have been a lot of guys did not play hardly at all as freshmen and then come on later in their career and turn into, I mean, the case of Nolan Smith turned into damn near an All-American, ACC Player of the Year caliber kind of player. Ryan Kelly, these guys got paychecks playing in the NBA. Just because you don't play as a freshman doesn't mean your career is over.
And this could be by design too, right, Jason? Like when we were talking about all these guys who were coming in, I mean, even last spring, we were like, hey, unless Schutt is shooting the ball, there may not be a lot of room for him in this offense yet. And I think that's the key word here, Jeff Lamb, my friend, yet. We haven't seen a lot of him yet. Let's see if we see that down the road. But right now, there's a couple of things he needs to work on.
Well, with that, we're going to wrap up this episode number 466 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. Donald Wine, thank you for being with me. Sam Klein, thanks for having a job and earning an income. We're sorry you couldn't join us here, man. Listen,
get that money.
Yeah, collect that money. Exactly. Sam said he was on a conference call with his bosses. He's like senior partners. He said, I think I can't say I got to run. I got to go do a Duke podcast. So we understand, Sam. It's fine. You'll make it up to us and to the audience over the weekend when we all talk about the latest goings on with Duke basketball and the latest game before the team takes a little bit of a break to take some exams and perhaps figure out Dariq Whitehead. That's going to do it for us. Again, he's Donald. I'm Jason. By the way, stick around at the end. After the Duke Band, we're going to talk a little bit about the movies. That's coming up. Duke Band, take us home. All right, so I was going to wait and save this for Sam to get on, and we could kind of do it as a post-credit thing, but I'll do it now. Guess what movie I saw last night?
Which one?
Avatar. Ooh. Way of the Water. Yes. So
how was it?
Here is my assessment. It is incredible to look at. The 3D stuff, I was taken back to how great the 3D was in Avatar. And I saw it on, it's because it's a critic thing. They showed it to us on a IMAX screen, not like a huge IMAX screen, but like, IMAX.
The tall ones. Yeah.
Yeah. But not like the monster ones, but it was pretty good, good size screen, but IMAX projectors. So super resolution. And they also showed it to us at 48 frames per second, which is, twice 24 is 48. Like that's a lot of frames. Mm-hmm. The resolution, it was so photorealistic. You were like, it feels like you're right there. It kind of looks like a video game. Like when a video game in your computer is even sharper to some extent than a
That's
movie.
what the trailer feels like to me. Is like that sort of. It felt like a video game trailer. Did you have to wear glasses?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
but they're easy. They I wear glasses. They went on top of my glasses. They were fine. So it's 3 hours and 15 minutes long, and I was not bored. Yeah, wait. I was not bored at all. So all those things sound like I'm about to tell you it's great, right? It's not. It's like the plot is such nonsense, makes no sense. I don't know what James Cameron was thinking. Like the characters have
exactly what he was thinking.
He's thinking, what he's thinking? I'll tell you what he's thinking. He's thinking I'm making 3 of these or maybe 4 of these. And so I don't need to tell the full story right now. He didn't have a story in mind. Like literally this story, nothing interesting or revealing happens in the story. There isn't a single. James Cameron movies are about characters going on a journey. Mm-hmm. Think about like Terminator and like Terminator 2. These movies, like
Titanic.
Linda Hamilton's character.
Even if you knew the story, even if you know the journey. Like there is one.
It's the journey. Linda, her character changes. Think about Titanic and how much some of those characters change in terms of Kate Winslet's character, how much she changes. Think about the original Avatar. The original Avatar is literally about a guy changing from a human into a Na'vi.
Well,
this movie, no one changes. I mean, everyone, and it's surprising because some of the characters they have things about them that are like, oh, that's gonna that's going to evolve over the course of the movie. Oh, that attitude, we're going to see that change into something. No one changes. 3 hours, nothing changes. It's bizarre.
Jason, the first Avatar is still the most watched movie ever, right? Like
something like that. Yeah.
Like a worldwide.
I think
actually,
it's still, I think Titanic is, but yeah, it's
right. No. It's Avatar. Avatar is like more people watched Avatar than any other movie in the world in history.
You mean in theaters? Because Titanic rules on cable.
Yeah. I'm just talking about theaters.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And for a decade, right? It held this record or was close to it. I think until episode 7 came through and kind of busted it. Yeah, until it got the domestic record, right? But everyone was like, Avatar is the movie that everybody has seen that no one can tell you what it's about. Like, all you know is that Avatar was like, they're like, when you talk about Avatar, you talk about, wow, the 3D was amazing. The whole world, it just feels like you're part of it. It's so realistic, yada, yada, yada. And they're like, okay, so what's the plot? And you're like, oh, it was a good movie, I guess. But, you know, that's, and it's also, everyone has only seen it once. Like, no one, like, before Wave of Water, they're not saying, yo, go watch Avatar again just to refamiliarize yourself. No.
Right.
Like, people are just like, just imagine what Avatar looked like, and we're going to make it more realistic for you, and here you go. Like, that's what it feels like this is. And they're coming out, it's like every other year they're coming out with one.
He's making like 3 of them or 4 of them. Yeah. And look, the bottom line is, I think you're going to want to see it because you're going to want to know what's going on for the sequels.
Right.
And because you really want to see the visual effects. This is the height of what filmmakers can do. Because James Cameron, given his track record, he goes to a studio and he goes, I want to make the phone book. And they're like, great, here's $1 billion. Do whatever you know. Mm-hmm. He is the man who can do whatever he wants on film because his track record is literally unrivaled in cinematic history.
What I'm curious about is this, right? Because Avatar, the first one, he mentioned that it took him like 15 years to make it because he wanted the technology to be at a point where the movie was what it was supposed to be, and the technology just wasn't there yet. Now that the technology is there, it's also, again, it's taken him another 13 years to make part 2. Because
a lot of that was 2009. That wasn't a technology thing. That was a James Cameron being motivated thing.
Right. That's my point, is that the technology has been there and it still took him that long. And I'm wondering what, like, he has to try and figure out, because again, they're thinking Avatar, most, profitable theater movie ever. How do I get people, if I get everyone who watched Avatar to watch this movie, it will make more because inflation, right?
Right.
This movie has not come out with the flair and with the like trailers or just even the promotion to say, yo, this movie, if you watched Avatar, you are going to love this second movie. You should go see it. Because literally, he's like, if he just said that, he'd be appealing to half the grit eating world. And he's not. And I think that is why I'm curious to see this movie. I don't even know if I'll see it in the theater. And I know that's probably sacrilege for this particular movie because you need the 3D portion of it. But I also aren't like, I'm not, he hasn't given me anything to say like, yo, I got to go see this, like Avatar was back in the day, where everyone's like, yo, I don't know if I'm going to like this movie, but I got to see it. Like, that's the feeling I don't get with this one.